Hello and welcome to More Than a Game. This week, fans discover stadiums as fans are permitted to return to some matches, and everyone instantly remembers why they hate some clubs as fans. Chelsea rediscover top spot as Bond supervillain Marcelo Bielsa loses out to Frank 003 Lampard in the Spygate derby. City rediscover their mojo after strolling past Fulham. And Everton rediscover their struggles as their season continues to stutter in the J. Rodriguez derby. My name's Tommie C. It's great to be back on the pod. And of course, joining me is Colby and Jesse. How you doing today, fellas? Colby?
Mate, going well. Beautiful Sunday afternoon here in Melbourne. Loving life. Ready for a big pod today.
Very good. Jesse, how about you, mate?
Likewise, mate, and good to see you, mate. Obviously, on the other side of the world. So this is an international podcast, and just a pleasure to be here.
Good to see you've dressed up the ecom for us, mate.
Mate, I made my bed. That's a start. All right, let's hook into it, shall we? Moment of the week, Colby, take it away, mate.
Moment of the week for me this week, boys, goes to Tommie Rogic. Just after I was shitting all over him on the pod a couple of weeks ago, goes and gets himself a goal in Celtic's 4-2 loss to AC Milan in the Europa League midweek. So it was if you didn't see it, it was a classic Rogic goal. Just pounces on a loose ball, loose touch in this case by Krunic on top of the box, and then slots it with his wonderful left foot. Great goal.
Magic.
Should that have been a moment of the week, or an own goal? The fact that Celtic lost their 2-goal lead and ended up losing.
I think Celtic were, they were always going to lose to AC Milan. So I mean, but Rogic finally does something. Could have been a known goal in its own special way. But no, always pleasing to see Aussies doing something and to score against Donnarumma at the San Siro. That's pretty nice. True
that. Jesse, what about you, mate?
I've got a few. Big Giroud with 4 goals stood out to me. And obviously we'll talk about it soon, but another one overnight. The big man. I mean, he's been wearing a tracksuit for the last 5 or 6 months and having to be patient and be the consummate professional, as Frank likes to refer to him. And then he comes on with, still an important game and scores all 4 of them by himself. Just fantastic, and it's just great to see people. Like, I always like it when players are kind of on the periphery, and instead of sulking and putting their head down, they just keep working hard. And it's testament to his professionalism that he can just hit the ground running again, especially when most people would have thought his career was kind of on the slide. So good on him. I was going to mention notable mentions go to Curtis Jones and Nico Williams combining against Ajax, 2 very young academy. Basically have come through that academy, and it's great to see them stepping up for the senior team, considering how many injuries they've got. And also Shakhtar doing another one on Real Madrid, which gee whiz, Real are in a world of hurt right now in the Champions League.
Yeah, and I think we'll cover that in a little bit more detail later in the pod in the Champions League segment. But lots of good areas there. Love your work, Jesse. So for me, mine is my moment of the week. I guess is a bit of a stretch this week. I struggled to find something particular that I wanted to pick out. So I just want to say that I'm loving being in a time zone that's actually conducive to watching football at a decent hour. Was just having a bit of a humble brag to the other two on the pre-pod chat, discussing how it's 4:00 here when the first game starts. So I'm loving life on a Saturday. All right, boys, but we'll get into an own goal though. Colby, take it away, mate.
Own goal this week, boys. It's the goes to the ACL, the Asian Champions League, and tape. Name a better duo. It struck again in Perth's ACL outing, where the refs made young Nicholas Walsh tape over some blood he had on his shirt. Don't know whether you saw this image, but wasn't allowed to go back on because he wasn't allowed to change into a shirt with a different number. They didn't have a duplicate of his same number, so the refs made him put the old duct tape over it. So it's just peak Asian Champions League. A lot of people are saying it's peak A League, but I mean, as we know after Tapegate at the Raw and taping over every sponsorship imaginable in the ACL, the AFC have got their own special love of peak moments.
That's like, is it just a Raw thing or is that just an A-League thing? Oh, sorry, it was Perth, wasn't it?
This was Perth. That's what I'm saying. It's not just the Raw, and it's everywhere the Asian Champions League played. Everything just gets taped over. I remember I got some old a match worn jersey that was like in the ACL, and it still had the tape on it, so I knew it was authentic.
Almost as cringy as back in the day when you had your VCR and you had like your favorite movie that you'd had on tape, and then someone accidentally tapes over it.
We've all been there. We've all been there, and it never gets any easier. That's interesting, Colbs, because I was just sort of thinking, like, it's almost like each club needs an in-house mum and dad, just to be like, have you remembered your jacket? You need a jacket. That kind of reminder of just like, hey, have you taken a spare shirt because you may need it, or have you got?
I just don't know why they don't have spare shirts anymore. Like, I mean, like they know this kind of shit's going to happen. Like, this is what caused the Brisbane Roar thing when the numbers were falling off. They didn't have for Eric Botek, they didn't have the 22 or whatever he was wearing, or the 77, and they had to use the tape to make it into another number because they didn't have it. So it's not as if this is without precedent.
It's the marketing budget. Marketing budget
by not having a spare shirt.
The A-League's broke. They can't afford spare jerseys.
Unbelievable. And Perth as well. They probably had a bag full of old training tops from 2 years ago, ready to put on as an away strip if needed.
Oh, Jesse, what about you, mate? What was your own goal this week?
Well, mine was first of all, and I need a few people to sort of validate what I just saw. I saw it on Twitter about a couple of hours ago. A Brisbane Roar player kicking it into his own net past the goalkeeper. Was this part of the preseason, Colbs? What was I watching? Basically, it just looked like somebody just didn't look up to see where Jamie Young was and proceeded to pass the ball back into their own net. So that was a late runner for my own goal. But I think the main own goal for me easily has to be the fans booing the players who are taking a knee for the Black Lives Matter. You've been waiting how many months to get into the stadium, and when you get there and you're part of that privileged few to actually be able to be at the game, you boo players for taking a knee which is probably about 20 seconds of the spectacle. It's just absolutely ridiculous. But I'm sure you guys will have more to say about that as well.
Mate, I do. So I took down some of the details of that Brisbane own goal. So it was young Macaulay Gillespie, who scored from 30 metres out and slipped it past. Yeah, exactly. But it's funny because something very similar almost happened last night in the City Fulham game as well, with John Stones just didn't look and almost put it past Edison as well. So look, it can happen to anyone. And I think it's probably happened multiple times to us in futsal as well. So, like I say, it can happen to anyone.
It happens in social futsal. It's infuriating when it happens at social level. I'm still flabbergasted that kind of stuff happens at the pro level. But there you go.
Mate, they're only human. In terms of the other thing you mentioned, Jesse, though, about the fans booing the Black Lives Matter, sort of taking a knee ritual now, it's interesting to note that Millwall was they were the first team that were allowed to have fans back. They booed the ritual, and they lost 1-0, I think, to Derby. West Ham were then the first team in the Premier League to have fans back. They booed the Black Lives Matter ritual, and then also lost. So a little bit of karma, I guess, for both sets of fans. But look, if there's one thing I do want to add as well, it's that so you have to remember that lots of teams have been saying, oh, geez, without having fans there, you're at a real disadvantage, right? But I've got to say, if in the lead up to kickoff, the thing that you're doing is booing, you're probably not actually a very positive influence on your team. And
no.
It blows my mind that teams think that a bunch of fans think, yeah, that's a great way to support our team. Regardless of the politics, and I think we've pretty much made our stance known on that on the pod previously, but just that idea that, oh, yep, the first thing that we're going to do as the game is starting is boo. No, stupid.
Yeah,
Tommie, you're talking about fans being a disadvantage when they come back, and most teams would probably expect their fans to give them an advantage when they do come back. I mean, the likes of Brighton and Sheffield have been crying out for a while in particular. But I don't know whether you heard this on the it was on the Guardian Football Weekly podcast this week. They were interviewing one of the blokes from the West Ham fan podcast, and he was saying, yeah, I think the West Ham fans, if anything, are going to be a disadvantage. And he was sort of attributing West Ham's good run of form to the fans not being there, because they are a particularly aggressive and aggrieved bunch of fans, not only at their players, but also obviously at the ownership group and stuff at the moment and stuff like that.
Just the world.
I thought it was pretty funny, yeah. And then for them to come in straight away and do that, it was very on brand for West Ham fans.
West Ham's fans have basically, I mean, West Ham as a club have performed the best this season, where the fans have been at home, and Moyes has been on an iPad at home as well. Basically, if everyone just goes home, they can perform nicely.
Boys, I want to throw out to something that I had scheduled for MTAG mailbag, but we'll throw it out there now. So Kozanaki asks on Twitter, who will be the first team to say that their team played better without fans?
Got to be West Ham. Has to be.
So he actually thought that Leeds were going to be the first team to do that, and I thought, well, yeah, maybe, but I mean, maybe it's just like the team that I support bias, but the first team I thought of was West Ham, especially knowing
the results speak for themselves, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. Alrighty. Thanks, Jesse, for your own goal. So for me, I had both the booing and that Brisbane Roar goal from Macaulay Gillespie, both pretty cringy. So I'm going to have to dig pretty deep for mine, and it's UEFA's announcement in the last, I think, 24 or 48 hours about the new third club competition for next season, and it's going to be called the Europa Conference League. This is basically a competition that nobody really asked for and nobody wants, and it's pretty much in the same way that some teams in those top tier leagues use the Europa League as sort of a backdoor for entrance into the Champions League. This is now basically a backdoor for middle and lower tier leagues to make the Europa League, which yeah, fair enough. It's a way that teams from Kosovo and Albania and the Faroe Islands now can get into the group stage for the Europa League, but it just seems like a competition that I don't think anyone's going to care about, apart from, some second and third tier teams throughout Europe. It's just bizarre. And I mean, already we've seen this year that there's lots of teams throughout Europe that are saying, oh, there's too many games, or there's not enough breaks and the like. And
well, not only that, Tommie, but it's such a we've seen even in the Europa League, it's such a struggle for some of these teams who sometimes get into it, like your Burnleys and Wolves and teams like that who have for pretty rich Premier League clubs as it is struggle to fill out those squads given their squad size and other cup and league commitments during the time. Like how are even smaller clubs going to do it? It's just going to end up being a glorified youth tournament.
Yeah, and like so, every nation's going to have an entrant into this at varying different levels, and so I think in the Premier League, sixth spot on the ladder is going to get a spot, or assuming sixth spot is already in one of the other European competitions through winning a cup or something like that. It means it's going to go down to the seventh spot, which again, like you're going to have half the Premier League playing in some form of European competition, which surely that waters down the prestige of playing in Europe if half of your league is playing in another competition as well.
And so I don't know the details, Tommie, but like people from teams from the Europa League going to drop down and then just win it? Like what happens with the Champions League? They just drop down from the Champions League and just win the Europa?
Yeah, so in the same way that the third place in the group stages of the Champions League dropped down to the Europa League, if you fail to qualify from your Europa League group, I think you're going to drop down into the what's it called again? The Europa Conference League. If there's one final thing that I hate about this, it now means that the three acronyms for the three UEFA competitions are UCL for the Champions League, UEL for Europa League, and the UECL for UEFA Europa Conference League. So, I mean, we're all going to be confused about that as well.
Oh, God. My question is, what night is this going to play on? because they're going to be on the same night as the
Friday.
Europa League. Friday
No, so
night. Yeah.
no, or Saturday night, and like teams are going to be playing 2 games in one day. No, so it's going to be Thursday nights. So
Gee
again,
whiz.
like who's going to be watching that instead of watching Europa League? Well, I guess nobody really watches Europa League as it is, except for people that are watching their own team. So anyway, rant over. Boys, let's move on. Colby, I can see there's a few bits of news that you wanted to touch upon this week,
Mate.
starting with Muskie getting sacked from Belgium.
I've got a lot of news items this week. I just saw you had it on the run sheet, and I was just looking back through my notes, and I've got a lot of news. So yeah, first on the list, Muskie sacked by Sint-Truiden in the Belgian Pro League. They had 2 wins in 14 games. The team was sitting 16th, sort of hovering around the relegation zone. So it's pretty clear why that's happened. But David Davutovic wrote a really good piece on Optus Sport about this, saying how much of a real setback this is for Aussie coaches in Europe, given that they already have a pretty bad perception problem, evidenced by the club's initial reluctance to even recognise Muskie's AFC badges, and now he's been sacked. So it really just seems like Aussie coaches in Europe, where players in Europe were like 20 to 30 years ago, because like, let's not forget when Muskie got this job, he was the only non-European / non-South American coaching in Europe's top 10 leagues, which was a massive breaking through a ceiling of sorts. And now having been sacked, it's sort of like confirmed that perception that clubs in Europe have, or have clearly of Aussie coaches. So a long way to go.
Yeah, I guess pretty disappointing. And I mean, I don't think there's much love lost between Muscat and a lot of Australian football fans after pretty divisive figure during his time at Melbourne Victory. But like you say, I guess it's sad from, I guess, just a general Australian perspective and our reputation overseas.
Yeah, absolutely. But
speaking of other Aussie coaches, though, yeah.
Ange,
good news.
On the other hand, Ange has signed a contract extension at Yokohama, so that's good news. And a lot of people are sort of saying that he really wants to sort of target the Asian Champions League now before he sort of jets off, hopefully to bigger and better things. And hopefully, Ange is just going about it the slow and steady way.
Yeah, and mate, look, on the topic of the Asian Champions League, I did see that Optus said that they're going to broadcast the round of 16 game between Yokohama and Suwon. So a couple of Aussies as well, obviously, at Suwon. You got Taggart and now I forget his name. Forlornly. Yeah. You know who I mean.
Antonis.
That's the one, yeah. So
isn't it funny that we just instantly forget about them when they go over to Asia when they really should be on our radar still? But yeah, I mean, I think that speaks volumes about how much of a long way to go the Asian competition has in perception stakes amongst Australian fans. Because I mean, we run a podcast dedicated to the A-League, and even these guys slip off our radar sometimes. So there you go.
Yeah, well, I mean, just on the topic of Australians, right? Like Brandon O'Neill, he signed a new deal with a Thai team in the last few days as well, which I think. Some of the Thai teams, are arguably doing better than the Australian teams in the Asian Champions League. But the fact that it's probably not that big of a deal that he's gone to another big Asian team is probably says a lot about how we generally regard the Asian competitions. But anyway,
Benjamin Button, just he never looks any different every time you see him. If anything, he's getting younger. Yeah.
Yeah, he hasn't aged. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Do you reckon
when he retires, he's just going to look 65, I reckon.
Yeah. What's the secret?
Maybe it's the massive shorts that he wears.
Yeah, big b-ball shorts.
Wearing jeans.
Bit more ACL news, boys. The VAC have qualified for the ACL round of 16, and this one really surprised me. They had an upset win over FC Seoul, and they're now the first Australian team to go through to the round of 16 in the Asian Champions League since 2016, like almost 5 years ago. So, and this is especially good considering how shit they were last year. They finished like 10th in the A-League or something, like narrowly avoided the wooden spoon. And now they go and get into the next round of the Asian Champions League. like when the group stage happens smack bang in the middle of their preseason as well, when they've got players leaving and everything like that. So it's a really great achievement.
Well, not everybody's got the Kiwi Messi. I mean,
that was a good goal too, that one.
Is this a bit of a vindication for Brebner's Brexit ball as well?
Yeah, I mean, he's clearly doing something right. I mean, and given all that stuff that I've just said, like what the squad he inherited, the turnover, the fact that they were in the middle of their preseason, and they go and get through, over FC Seoul, and in a group, obviously, Beijing Guoan were comfortable winners in that group, but to get through that group, there were no pushovers in it. So, yeah, good on them.
How much further do you think they need to get in the comp before the Wanderers fans start hiding behind the couch?
I think they've got a long way to. I think the Wanderers can keep crowing for the time being. But the VUC are going to play. Who have they got? They've got Ulsan Hyundai, the Group F winners, in the next round. So that should be good.
Very good.
Probably.
Mate, more ACL news. Sydney obviously beat SIPG away.
Yep. Pumped them 4-0 away at Shanghai. So there was a Wilco header, but the Bratton goal in this was a delightful goal. I don't know whether you saw it, but basically the ball was pinging around the top of the 18-yard box, and it just comes to Bratton. He's about 25, 30 yards out and just hits it across the 18-yard box and into the top left corner. It was just a fantastic goal. And then Mahaji goes and gets another 2, and just they run riot. Obviously, Sydney just playing for pride. But the other thing to remember about this is that there's coefficient points at stake here, and I don't claim to know exactly how this works, but I think you sort of get something like 3 points in the coefficient for a win, basically. And essentially, in the last couple of years, I think Australian teams have only been getting 2.9 points, something in the coefficient in total. And now, with a couple of wins, with the victory going through, and with Sydney getting a nice win here, it'll be the most points that Australian teams have garnered in the ACL for a number of years. So that's a really good news story, actually.
Do you think that the coefficient's the equivalent of our Fantrax fantasy sports competition?
No one knows how it works.
We're all getting points, but nobody has any idea how it works.
I think it's exactly like the points in our weird fantasy Fantrax competition, Jesse. Yeah, no one knows how it works.
It's just like the GIF, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Massive
visual joke for those listening to the pod. All right, and Colby, one final thing: FFA Cup.
The FFA Cup. So yeah, the fuck up. Well, it might be called that soon. We don't know. We don't know yet. We're still calling it the FFA Cup, but there's been a few little tweaks that they're going to make to the competition. It was announced during the week. The semi-finals and finals have been earmarked for standalone weekends, which will be good. So they'll get their own sort of clear air. And the finals rounds will have an open draw for the first time, as well as there is now going to be a pathway to the ACL. I think it'll be half a point, or I don't know, something like that. Another thing that I don't quite fully understand. But there'll at least be a chance if you win the, if you win the FFA Cup, you can get to the ACL. And there's also announced that there'll potentially be a new name. So who knows what that'll be? It could just be the fuck up.
Not only that, Colby, I think there was even an idea mooted that they could do a group stage as well, which that group stage would obviously have a whole bunch of NPL teams in it as well, which that could be a real money spinner for them potentially. So that's something that I would really like to see. And the other thing you mentioned about, I guess, the name change is that I think everyone thinks it's a no-brainer that calling this the Australia Cup is just the way to go.
Yeah, it sounds like that's the front runner, certainly, if soccer Twitter's to be believed.
What about the Caltex Australia Cup?
I mean, I miss Caltex. I miss them, boys.
What about we call it the Ampol Cup or something?
Oh.
the Kazoo Cup.
Yeah, we need Kazoo over here. We've been campaigning on this podcast to get Kazoo over for a while. So, I mean, if anyone's listening who could hook us up, get us in touch with Kazoo. We need to bring them over here. They're only doing good things.
Plan B can be Papa John's.
Oh dear. All right, boys. I don't think we've got any more news, do we? We're 25 minutes in and we haven't really talked any matches yet.
That's how we do it.
No, right. So, all right. Let's get into some Premier League then. So, first up, we're going to cover the Spygate derby, or the reunition of Frank Lampard against Marcelo Bielsa's Chelsea versus Leeds. So, I think everyone expected this one to be an absolute goal fest, and it didn't really disappoint. I've got to say, I watched the mini match this morning. Didn't watch this one; it was a midnight kickoff here, but with the mini match, it felt like, you know, those highlight packages where they're just trying to cram everything in because so much happened. It felt like that, and lots of chances. Could have been one of those games where there were 5 goals apiece kind of thing, but it didn't really finish that way. Leeds opened the scoring through Patrick Bamford after an absolutely sumptuous through ball from Calvin Phillips. Boys, was there a better through ball this weekend than that one?
DJ Calvin just put it on the turntable.
Well, actually, later in the game, in the lead up to, actually, it wasn't lead up to the goal. It was when Werner missed, but I think it was either Chilwell or Kovacic who did a beautiful pass that cut out about 4 Leeds defenders. But this one was right up there. It was amazing pass.
Yeah, and look, Jesse, you mentioned about Werner's miss. Which one, I've got to say, because he
got 8 goals or something in this game.
Yeah, not his best performance. I guess Lampard would be happy because Werner's getting into good goal scoring positions,
good areas,
coaching line,
good areas.
What's the XG?
Oh, I reckon some of them would have been like 0.99 XG chances. But look, that first one on 10 minutes where I think it might be going in anyway, and then Werner gets a goal on
clearance. That's a clearance.
You know what? Like, I was pretty ready to savage him after that, and then like the more I saw the replays, like I can see, like in the heat of the moment, why he tried to touch it, because like it looked like from the angle behind, like when you see it live, that it is going in. But then you look
if it's missing and he doesn't. Imagine if it's missing and he doesn't stick out his toe.
Yeah. Yeah, like you look at it from his angle and you're just not quite sure. So from his angle, he felt like he needed to make it safe, which he abruptly didn't.
Boys, if there's one person who this reminded me of, it was Andy Corpanitas, because he is a man that can find a miss from a goal at any opportunity.
Put some respect on Andy's name. Put some respect on Andy's name.
The poor man's not here to defend himself.
I've seen him miss better.
I feel for Andy because I mean that's a backhanded compliment if I've ever heard one, that we're comparing him to Werner.
It's an insult.
What do you mean? I'm comparing him to Werner, one of the best footballers in the world right now. All right. Moving on though. So Giroud, Big G, he equalised after Reece James's low cross on 26 minutes, which good goal, good finish. But look, probably the real important thing that came out of that passage of play was Ziyech looked as though he got injured in the lead up to that though, and he ended up going off to be replaced by Pulisic. Yeah, which one of a couple of hamstring or another soft tissue injury that happened throughout the day's play. Big loss for Chelsea if he's going to be out for a few weeks or longer.
Well, yeah, but I mean, they've got a lot of really great technical players in that team, so I think they've got a lot of good coverage in that position. But hopefully he's not out for too long. Wonderful left foot.
It'll change the dynamic a little bit because of course we've talked about James having this room because Ziyech is a left footer. So if you take a left footer out of it and you replace it with, say, Pulisic on that side, then do they get in each other's way at that point?
Didn't Reece James put that on a dime though?
Reece James, Reece James, who looks like he's straight out of Monsters Inc. An absolute brilliant ball. In fact, he's starting to emerge as one of the top fullbacks in the comp, and those passes. I mean, let's put some respect on the finish though. That was not an easy chance. They could have gone anywhere. So Big G's in form.
He is indeed. It's 5 goals in 3 days or something.
And full respect to Frank for playing him as well, because there was a lot of talk in the lead up to this that Giroud wouldn't exactly match the sort of running that you would necessarily want against the higher line at Leeds and this and that. But, Frank's just like recognised the 4 goals. He's scoring goals. He's in the team and puts him in, and Giroud rewards the faith as well and looked like he could have had 2 or 3 goals himself were it not for, a couple of saves from Meslier as well. So, I mean, yeah, keep playing him if he's in this kind of form.
Well, it's funny. I think, like you say, Meslier gave the ball away to I can't remember which Chelsea player, but Giroud was the one who the chance fell to, and arguably that was probably an easier chance, I think. Yeah. Anyway, so cut to the 80th minute, and Paveda, who I saw a great screen capture in the last few days of Pavedo's youth career, where I think he played at Arsenal, Chelsea, Barcelona, and one other, which someone was saying was like a real football manager areas, that he's just bounced between like a whole bunch of like top European clubs as a youth player. But he copped a bit of a kick and stayed on his feet, and obviously as a result, no penalty or foul was given. You boys see this one? You think he should have gone down, or you think it should just straight up be a penalty?
He had to go down to get the penalty. That's obviously how it is. It was basically identical to the Robbo one, except Paveda didn't do the Danny Welbeck and crumple into a pack of cards. So,
if Paveda's listening to this, he could go down now, and they'd probably still get the penalty if the Welbeck pen was anything to go by.
Exactly.
Well, as we saw, there was contact, so he could go down now, and you'd be fine.
Well, as we saw with Brighton and Man United earlier in the season, just because the final whistle's gone doesn't mean the VAR can't get involved.
So exactly, and in penalty Man United.
Yeah. All right, boys. Look, final talking point for this one. Do you guys think that Chelsea should get killed off the game sooner than what they did?
I think it was quite disappointing from Leeds. Like, I was watching it with a Leeds fan this morning, and we were sort of just trying to see where they were going to get a response from. And it was really interesting because it almost seemed like from the 60th minute that the commentators were resigned to this being a Chelsea win, and they were already talking about the next fixture and Leeds' next fixture. And it just looked like Leeds ran out of any kind of response after about the 65-minute mark, which was disappointing because really the game was in the balance right up to the final whistle. There was just 1 goal in it. And I know that Chelsea had their fair share of chances, but Chelsea weren't converting those chances, and they just needed to show a bit more composure. The frustrating thing about watching Leeds this morning was that they were getting into positions where they just seemed to just resort to some long ball passes at times because Chelsea were pressing, and that's testament to Chelsea's defence. But Leeds were at their best when they did the give and goes and the short passing, and they couldn't, seemingly in the second half, they couldn't seem to string a sort of a sequence beyond maybe 2 passes before they'd lose the ball. Harrison lost the ball a lot, and I think he got hooked in the end. So it just, if you were a Leeds fan, I imagine you would have been really frustrated at the sense that they probably didn't give it a proper crack in that second half. They just couldn't string enough passes together to actually worry Chelsea enough. So.
Yeah, I guess like we're probably starting to see some signs that Leeds are, I think, missing a little bit of quality to play against some of these top teams. But I also wonder as well, like you mentioned how Leeds faded in the final sort of 15, 20 minutes of the game, and you almost wonder if we're starting to already see the signs that Leeds are running out of puff a little bit. It's not great that like they're struggling to kill off games and physically kill off games. So, we'll have to pay attention to that over the next couple of weeks, though. Boys, anything else from this one that you wanted to throw out there?
Only thing I had on my notes, Tommie, is can we talk about Christian Pulisic's little beard? Has he been going to the same barber as Giroud?
Somebody, I saw a comment that somebody said that he looked like somebody from the Book of Mormon. And to be honest, I wouldn't dispute that. I wouldn't dispute that.
Gee, that's not bad.
It honestly, there's just something about it that really bothered me from the minute that he went on the pitch. It didn't make sense to me. Like it wasn't like, oh, that's a bit strange, I'll move on. Like every time I saw him, like that's not right.
We've seen some really strange hair. I mean, you've got Reece James on the field with that bucket hat haircut, and we've commented on some pretty strange facial hair choices in our time. But this one it's simple, but it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't feel right.
Yeah. It looked like it had been lasered on pre-game.
Oh, wow. All right. Moving on, though. So in the next game, my West Ham looked like they were going to do a number over Manchester United before basically the second half started. And it all came crumbling down for West Ham after, as we said earlier, they booed the Black Lives Matter ritual, and they probably got their comeuppance as a result. But boys, this was a game really of two halves. I'm not sure if you're going to assume you probably didn't see the game in full. You probably caught the mini match. In this one, the first half was all West Ham. In fact, Man United I thought were extremely poor, and even when Man United looked as though they should have been comfortable in certain moments, such as set pieces and the like defensively, they were just a shambles. And there were times when Lindelof was just screaming at his whole, not just the defence, but some of the midfielders as well, because there was no line, people weren't marking, people were ball watching, and they really were terrible in that first half. But look, if there's one thing that Solskjaer can do well, and that's make some changes to affect a match, and he brought on Bruno Fernandes in the second, at halftime to replace Dawson, who had been pretty poor in that first half as well. Bruno Fernandes came on and pretty much just lit up the match in the second half, though. I think he created 8 big chances, which is second only in a match to Kevin De Bruyne, I think, in the last few years. So pretty immense from Bruno Fernandes. And I mentioned earlier just as well about through balls, that one of Fernandez's through ball, I think it was for Rashford, was just an absolute peach as well. Boys, I feel like I've just summarised the whole game. Did either of you have anything you wanted to throw out about this one?
I saw
Go on, Jesse.
I just saw a stat just before I jumped on about, I think that they've amassed, since he's joined them last February, they've amassed 50-something points, which is more than any other team in that time. Like he's just had an extraordinary impact, and as it's been well documented on the previous pods when I've talked about it from a sporting perspective, and my only concern with him is I didn't know if he was going to be physical enough for this league, and he's proved that he's more than capable in the league. But it's just the fact that I think that what he's benefiting from is that he's a player that just plays with what he sees. And I think that the league has kind of been littered too much with structured players in recent times, and everyone's kind of all about the system. And he's just a natural player. Like if he wants to play a long pass, he'll play a long pass. He's not going to stick to a playbook. He'll just play with what he sees. And it's great to see a player that has natural ability and is not being sort of reined in and harnessed is the one that's actually dominating the league. I think that's the way it should be. He's a natural footballer.
For context, like we've been gassing up Diamanti in the last 12 months in the A-League because of how he comes into the league and basically he's just trying the most audacious pass almost possible at every opportunity, and Fernandes does the same thing. Like except he's just at another level technically, and so more often than not, for him it comes off though. So
that can be really frustrating, Tommie. Like there's nothing worse at any level of football than having a player in your team who just wants to try a Hollywood ball, every single ball, and it not coming off. But when it comes off more often than not, they're just an absolute joy to watch. Yeah, just like Diamanti, as you say, and just like Fernandes.
I feel attacked right now, mate.
Yeah, I was going to say, we haven't seen this kind of wizardry since Tommie started his career for the South Euro Casuals.
So I've seen Tommie spray a few very nice passes in
pick a pass
futsal comp, but
I'm more Diamanti than I'm more Diamanti than Bruno, that's for sure. Alrighty, boys. If one final thing I guess I want to throw out about this one is I mentioned about how poor Man United were in the first half, but look, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that I think West Ham deserve a little bit of credit for their first half performance as well. There were probably two periods, the first 15 minutes and then the final sort of 15 to 20 minutes where they were creating chances left, right, and centre. And if not for some poor finishing from Fornals and Bowen and even Allaire as well, they could have had the game pretty much wrapped up in the first half. And I even wonder if at 3-0 down or something like that, if Bruno Fernandes might have even come on at halftime. So a big opportunity missed for West Ham. I think they probably would have thought that they could have had this wrapped up at halftime. But like I said, some poor finishing from Fornals, Bowen and Allaire. Boys, did you think Solskjaer knew that that Man United would be terrible in the first half, and the plan all along was for Fernandes to come on in the second half and blow the Hammers away? Was this deliberate?
I think it was very fortunate that he could have a game changer like Fernandes sitting on his bench. Which is what I would say, and it's a no-brainer to put him on at half time.
Fair enough, but it's interesting. Like we've talked almost nonstop about Bruno for the last sort of 5 to 10 minutes, but it was Pogba of all players on the pitch who ended up scoring the equaliser.
Gee whiz, what a goal!
Was that goal of the round for you two?
Thus far, yes.
Yeah.
It's the kind of play that we haven't seen from Pogba for a long time, like over 12 months, I think.
This is what we thought he'd be doing every second week. When we saw him at Juve in that sort of advanced midfield role, just sort of strolling up and firing in rockets. We thought he'd be doing this like every week when he came to the Premier League. But more of this, please.
It's a bit of a throwback, wasn't it? But if we can talk about throwbacks or throw-ins or going back to a throw-in, boys, did you think that the VAR by now should have a way in which they can review whether or not a ball's gone out or not?
Did it cross the line? I think a bit of the logo.
Technology.
A bit of the logo actually crossed the line. I think we have to review that.
So I feel like this has come up before about whether or not a ball was out for a throw-in or not. And they said, "Oh, yeah, we're sorry, can't check that." And I'm pretty sure we discussed it on the pod about that. How do they not have the ability to check this? And here we are, I think, 12 months later, saying the exact same thing. So I don't know. My spidey senses were tingling that the ball had gone out, but obviously it's pretty hard to tell from the rubbish angle that we were given on the telly.
Well, the big controversy was the angle showing the line umpire just running without even looking where the ball was. That's what got people really triggered. They're like, he's not even looking at the ball. So how would he know?
Linos are just on autopilot now. Like they've got the VAR for the offsides, and they don't have their flag until like 10 minutes after an offside happens. Now they just, what are they there for?
It's like more than a game host when we organise to go to the Imperial to watch a few games of the EPL. Like people ask us questions, and we just head down,
running to the bar.
Head down, running to the bar. Like, there's no point trying to have a conversation. It's just beeline to the MP.
Oh dear. Alrighty, boys. We'll keep moving though, unless there's anything else for this game. Nope. All right. So next up, City hosted Fulham in pretty much the most straightforward result that you're likely to see over the next couple of weeks. City took the lead within 5 minutes after Kevin De Bruyne released Sterling, who finished tidily, even if his hairdo isn't particularly tidy. Sort of trying he's in the early stages of the Reece James or the Reece James hairdo at the moment. But then about 25 minutes later, after City were pretty much dominating the game, Sterling was fouled by Joaquin Anderson. Joaquin. And KDB dispatched the resulting penalty. So and that it stayed at 2-0 for City for the remainder of the match. And I've got to say, I actually fell asleep while I was watching this. That's how interesting this game was in the second half. It was really City just pretty much just going through the motions.
Once it became clear that Fulham were absolutely no chance, snowball's chance in hell at winning this, I just lost interest.
Well, I mean, the highlights package in Optus Sport pretty much summed it up. I mean, you get to the 56-minute mark and then it just finishes. And there are no highlights beyond like the 56-minute or something. And I'm like, well, geez, that must have been a pretty dire last half an hour.
Yeah, it was. Look, there's two things I thought that stood out in this one, though. The first one was that KDB obviously was in his rampaging best form, pretty much just running the show. But his positioning, I thought, was probably the thing of most interest, because he wasn't sort of in that free 8 position that we've seen him become accustomed to seeing him in over the last few years. He was pretty much in like a number 10 position behind Gabby Jesus, but Gabby Jesus wasn't particularly involved in any of the build-up play. Everything that City did seemed to be all just designed to get KDB into the best position to shoot. And really, like previously we've seen Aguero being the focal point for City, but KDB is pretty much the focal point for City attacking at the moment, even though he's not playing up front. It's kind of weird to watch, but at the same time, obviously, they know their strengths and they're playing towards them at the moment.
I read that Mari's had a good game as well. Even though he didn't score, he seemed like he was involved.
Yeah, Mahrez was it was a little bit strange for Mahrez, because he did have it was a solid game. I wouldn't say that he stood out in any particular way though, but because of Cancelo was bombing on past him, it meant that Mahrez needed to cut inside but start quite narrow. So it meant that like he was sort of starting in a place that doesn't really suit Mahrez's game. He much prefers to be starting out on the touchline and then cutting in against an isolated defender. But anyway, it seems like Cancelo is the main man for them on either side at fullback at the moment. So interesting for him. The other thing I wanted to mention was about Stones, though. He obviously started again after starting last week as well. And besides that, that moment that I mentioned earlier about how he tried to play the ball past Edison, he actually had another pretty solid game. Obviously, a game that suits him against a team that's not particularly strong on the counter, but it's going to be interesting to see if Stones is able to keep his position now. Laporte was on the bench and he played alongside Ruben Dias, so interesting signs ahead for Stones. Boys, anything else for that one? Nope. All right. So the final match was the J Rodriguez derby. In this one, this is the first time that we've seen a J Rodriguez derby since J Rodriguez's West Brom drew 1-1 with Jesse Rodriguez's Stoke in 2017. And interestingly enough, J Rodriguez scored that day. So unfortunately, neither of the J Rodriguezes scored in this one overnight. Burnley took an early lead through Robbie Brady, who I had completely forgotten about, truth be told. He did the business for me, I think, about 3 or 4 years ago in fantasy, and no one's heard from him since. I think he had a pretty bad knee injury, and he's just disappeared ever since. But he had a fantastic shot in about the second minute. Boys, do you think Pickford should do better there, or is this just Pickford?
Well placed. It's a good shot. Yeah. Credit to the goal scorer.
Fair enough. All right. The other probably point of note here was that I mentioned before about there being more soft tissue injuries this weekend, and Fabian Delph went off with a hammy on about the 29th minute. It was one of those ones where you see the player pull up and instantly they wave to the bench. You hate to see these, don't you? Yeah,
you do. And I mean, you got to feel for the guy. He's played a lot of football. But he has been a bit. It's like he was just arrived, sort of broken from City. He was just sort of holding it together at his time in City, and then he sort of hasn't been able to put together a run of games at Everton, which is a real shame. But the other sort of shame about this is that this will go down as one of the stats that people will wheel out. It'll just build on that body of evidence of there's been so much football being played. Look at all the fixtures, all all these soft tissue injuries. Like, how bad is it? But actually, that's not why Delph got this injury. Like, he hasn't been playing in all of these European competitions and playing week in, week out. This is just a guy who's sort of coming to the end of his career, and is all the football that he played in the previous years are catching up with him.
Yeah, and the lack of football that he's played as well, and probably the last 6 months as well. Like he's barely played, and
that's protective as well, isn't it? The conditioning that you get from football, it's sort of a virtuous cycle you get on, or a vicious cycle when you're trying to come back from an injury, and we see that time after time with these players who are trying to work their way back, and it must be a really tough process.
He's the Band-Aid or the Sally's auto gap for Everton. They use him in basically every position in the back line, including the midfield sometimes. And so it's actually a bit of a blow for Everton, because they really can do with a player like that to cover a lot of positions.
Well, they could just deal with a left back at the moment. Like they obviously Leighton Baines, he left over the summer, and Luca Dean's out injured at the moment as well. And so they probably would have been pretty happy to bring Delph back and let him fill in at left back, even if it's for only a month or two. But the fact that they've now lost him really means that they're down onto their bones' arse. Iwobi played on the left last week, and that didn't really work. And I mean, Iwobi was terrible in this match. Iwobi, I was just sitting there screaming at the TV, going, "Why won't you cross the ball?"
Man like Iwobi wants to cut in.
Oh man, he kills me. And even when he does get into a good position to cut the ball back, like from the byline, he just stops and then goes, "Nah, I might play this around slowly, go back around the edge of the box." And just, he's such a frustrating player to watch. He doesn't even play for my team.
Everton is so funny with the way they set their squad up, though. They just seem to love buying players in the one position. It's like they sort of just go nuts in the one position. Like a couple of years ago, that when they had Rooney, Sigurdsson, Davy Klaassen or Davy Proper, one of the Dutch boys.
Klaassen,
anyway, they had like Klaassen. Yeah, they had like 3, 4, 5 number 10s or something like that, and then they had to sort of ship a few out and repurpose a couple. And then they had a big gap in the number 6 position, but now they've got Delph, Gumbaman, Alan, Decore, who are all like your sort of number 6 holding midfielders, who is, some of who could play more advanced, like Decore and stuff like that as well. But it's just like, now they're short in the sort of wing back and fullback department, and I think next season we'll see them bring in like 5 or 6 left backs.
Yeah.
Knowing their injury run, they could probably deal with about 5, because they're going to use all 5 throughout the season. But speaking of comebacks, though, Everton did make a good comeback here late in the first half, with Richarlison making a nice cutback for Dominic Calvert-Lewin to equalise, and that was pretty much the last interesting thing that happened with this game. It was another game where pretty much nothing happened in the second half, and it's like, what's going on? Why is there nothing happening in the second half of these football matches?
There was something funny they had in pre-game though, Tommie. I don't know if you saw it in the coverage, but I was watching sort of the half an hour leading up to the kickoff, and they just went down to the pitch and they were just videoing the Everton players taking shots, and
oh Lord.
It was so funny. Like basically, Richarlison like patiently waited in the line. He went behind a few players, and they were just doing the give and go and take a shot at the keeper. And he just like it's his first touch. He hits it onto his left, like arrogantly puts it on his left, and he just blasts it into like the top tier of the stadium. And you're sort of like, that's really going to set a real precedent for this game. And sure enough, most of the game, this shooting was dog shit. So it just goes to show that it's a bad omen when you see your players blasted into the stand at Turf Moor before the whistle's even blown.
Sometimes you don't want to meet your heroes, right? All right, boys. We'll keep moving on to the previews, though. Still 5 matches to be played this game week. A couple of pretty tasty games coming up. One in particular, North London Derby, is going to be played tonight. Boys, let's rip through a preview / prediction for these. Tell me why you think someone is going to win and what the score is going to be. Jesse, West Brom and Palace. Who's going to win and why?
I think it's going to be 1-0 Palace. not going to be much to comment on in the game. It's going to be pretty dire, but I think Palace will nick one. So,
Just because Zaha?
Just because Zaha.
Colby, Sheffield United and Leicester. Who's going to win? Why?
I think Sheffield could spring a surprise here. They're long overdue for a win, and Leicester have been really, really funny against teams they should be beating. So I wouldn't be surprised if Sheffield spring a surprise. But the only thing I would say for Leicester is they've been playing a lot better away from home, and this one is at Sheffield's home stadium. So I do fancy Sheffield here to spring a surprise.
Okay. Liverpool hosting Wolves. Jesse, your two teams. Colby, obviously, you're a Liverpool supporter as well. Who's going to take this one away?
I think I would be lucky to keep a clean sheet, but I do think Liverpool will pull away 3-1. Yeah.
I think with
no Jimenez is big.
Huge loss for them. You almost fear that their early season predictions of them finishing sort of 7th or thereabouts, they may struggle to meet those early season expectations now because he's such an important player for them. Brighton versus Southampton. Is this a South Coast derby or not really? I don't know where Brighton is or how close it is to Southampton.
I don't think they like each other.
They're not mates.
Even though Brighton is the main rival is Palace, supposedly.
That's just weird.
Yeah, but I do actually think there is a little bit of a rivalry there. I'm not 100% sure. But
who's
yeah,
going to win?
I'm actually backing Southampton to win this. But one thing that Southampton have to be wary with is that they seem to be fading really badly in the last, at least the last half an hour of a game. So Brighton will punish them if they don't hang on, but I think they'll hang on.
Brighton at home and Brighton are due as well. I know.
Been so unlucky the last few weeks, haven't they?
Yeah, they've been very unlucky for quite a few weeks. And you've got Dakai Welbs, before he gets injured. So I mean, Brighton could be on for a couple of goals in this one.
I actually think outside of the North London derby, I think that's going to be a cracker of a match. I'm actually pretty excited for that one. Boys, onto the big match though. North London derby, like I said, this has all of the makings for being probably just as boring as the Spurs Chelsea game from last weekend. But do you think it could actually sort of turn out to be quite exciting, or?
This has got classic Mourinho written all over it. And by classic Mourinho, I don't mean parking the bus necessarily. I mean the mind games in the lead up. Oh, Harry Kane's injured. Oh, we might not have him. I'm not going to say what the injury is. And then bam, Harry Kane plays, and Spurs are offensive, and put 3 or 4 past Arsenal.
I wouldn't be surprised if that happens as well, right? Like, I don't think anyone was really expecting for Spurs to light up Man United earlier on in the season, but this has got the makings of a similar sort of result for me. Obviously, we've seen Son and Kane just in amazing form early on in this season, and they've been pretty free scoring so far this year as well, Spurs, which I don't think anyone really was really expecting that. But with Arsenal, they're just not scoring goals at the moment. So, and this Spurs defense has been really tight as well. So, you can really only see this going one way.
Yeah, I do think Kane, he's the key in this game. Provided he plays, which I think we all assume he will. I think he could actually grab a brace here because I just think that it's a bit. I don't know if we can compare this to the Chelsea game and the Man City game because I think Mourinho went into those games very much content with a point. I actually think in this game, I do think that Mourinho thinks he's actually this because Arsenal have been giving up so many shots and so many chances that they are actually, even though they are trying to drop back more and put more people behind the ball, they are giving up more chances. So Mourinho, if he's treating it as a game by game thing, I don't necessarily think he'll park the bus. I think he might try to do some tactics in the first 20 minutes just to frustrate Arsenal, and then we'll probably see a change halfway through the game.
If by some chance Kane doesn't play, do you think that's going to massively change how Jose would approach this match?
Yeah, I reckon. I mean, unless he plays Son through the middle, but if Kane doesn't play, it kind of turns more into a smash and grab kind of style.
Well, it's Bale time, surely, if Kane doesn't play.
I almost wonder if what's his name, Carlos Vinicius, I think it is, the guy that came from Portugal. I can't remember the guy's name, but I wonder if he would get a start and they would use him more like how Kane has been used this year.
Big game to throw him in, but you never know.
I know he had a good game in the Europa League a couple of weeks ago. I think I'm pretty sure they scored 3 that day. I think, well, actually, it might have been 4, but I'm pretty sure he scored 2. So. Yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting. I'm almost more interested if Kane doesn't play about how Jose approaches the match. I think it's pretty obvious how he'll approach it if Kane does play, and I think they're gonna really go for it if Kane starts. But boys, all right, give us a score prediction.
3-0 Spurs.
Yeah, I think it could be 3-0 Spurs as well. I just got this feeling that Spurs are going to do them. So.
Fair enough. All right. Thanks for your predictions, fellas. We're going to move on to an FPL update now, though. So another month and another prize to give away in our FPL competition. This month's overall winner snuck home right at the death and took it by just 3 points over second place getter. In second place was Matt Bellotti's Anakin Dare Skywalker. I don't quite get the reference in the name, but yeah, cool. I think everyone loves a Star Wars reference. That means David Brindley's Super Jack 2 FC takes out the November prize. But seeing as though both David and Matt weren't fee-paying entrants, that means that More Than a Game Zone Jesse, who's in third place, takes out the prize. What a moment indeed! Have you got a speech prepared, or did you even know that you'd had that good a month?
I knew that they'd done pretty well, but I didn't know I was in such illustrious company, and I just want to thank my wife. I want to thank my family and friends, and most of all, More Than a Game, for all the support over the years. I always believed I'd get here, and I just want to say thanks for everyone who believed in me along the way.
Absolute Stephen Bradbury areas.
Yeah. So Jesse, you're actually doing quite well overall as well. I think you're in third place overall. So, mate, you're killing it this year and going to be following that very closely over the next couple of months. So, mate, I think all of the More Than a Game panel is rooting for you.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Actually, sorry, I take that back. You're in second place. You're just ahead of Matt. So, yeah, it's still plenty of football to be played. Still plenty of FPL to be played. So it's still anyone's race, though. So tune in again in another 4 weeks, and I'll be giving away another prize. Hopefully, not this time to a More Than a Game panel member. It was so Sal in the comments on the live show is saying that it's rigged and we need to do a recount. So I think almost every listener of the pod right now probably has the same feeling. So soz, not soz.
It's corrupt M tag.
Hey, look, anyone can see the scores. All right, we'll move on to some Champions League though quickly before we wrap things up. So this week saw the conclusion of match day 5 of the Champions League. Obviously, some pretty tasty results. Jesse, at the top, you mentioned about how Real Madrid could go out, and obviously last week on the pod, guys, you were saying about how Inter are pretty much done. But this week, we're going to be seeing the final match day of the Champions League, which means that we're going to be seeing a couple of groups that haven't yet been confirmed. We're going to see probably some big names drop out as well. Boys, is there a big dog that you'd like to see miss out in the knockout rounds who at this point is likely to miss out?
Gee whiz, it would be tasty to see PSG go down because, I mean, that group's all tied up with Leipzig, PSG and United all on 9 points. Leipzig and United are gonna play each other with a draw enough for United to go through. And PSG have, who's the team who's coming last in that group?
Istanbul.
They've got the easy game, Istanbul. Oh, back to here, yeah. They've got Istanbul, who've been no pushovers, but I mean, they've definitely got the easier fixture. So it would be absolute scenes to see an upset there and PSG to miss out.
See, I agree with that, but I actually have to say that if United drop out of this group, it will be a massive choke because they were clearly comfortable from the others. Did such good work in the early stages, and this had impacts on the Premier League. I mean, this is why Bruno's on the bench. You know, like Ole needs to rest his players now because he needs to get points in the final game. So, yeah, if they drop out, I mean, they'll be kicking themselves considering that it didn't seem that long ago that they put 5 past Leipzig.
Yeah, and I think it's of those 3 teams, it's actually probably like the scenario is the least complicated for Leipzig, right? Like they've got one mentality, which is rock up, win the game, and you qualify. So you look at Man United and you sort of wonder, are they going to try and play for a draw and then concede late and then everything's going to go to shit after that, or how's this all going to pan out? But yeah, I think there's a lot of people, Colby, who also would like to see PSG not qualify. I think it'd pretty much be the end for Tuchel as well. So, what about you, Jesse? Who would you like to see miss out from the knockout rounds?
Well, for me, it was United, I suppose, but also PSG. So it was definitely the same group. I think it's the tastiest group. I'm just looking at the other ones at the moment. There's nothing else that really jumps out.
Madrid would be a big one to
yeah,
qualify.
Yeah, like Madrid to not qualify. I mean, I think we'd all love to see the meltdown that would ensue from that.
The interesting thing about that is, like, obviously, Real Madrid have just not been the same side since Ronaldo left. But it'd be interesting to see what happened to Zidane if Real Madrid were to fail to qualify for the knockout rounds. Like, would they sack him, even though he's obviously just such an immense figure at the club now after winning 3 successive Champions Leagues? Or does it not matter? Or yeah, really, really interesting to see how that all pans out. Boys, there's a couple of underdogs, though, that are a decent chance to make it through. Obviously, I'm not sure if Leipzig count as an underdog anymore, but they're obviously a chance. What about yourselves? Which underdog do you want to see qualify?
Well, I can see, Tommie, you've helpfully got Shakhtar on the on this list for us, and I think that would be a huge story, considering they did the double over Madrid, and then now they just need to knock off Inter, who don't have anything to play for. So, and they've got a lot to play for in the league. So you'd expect that Inter could potentially put out a B side. So, I mean, I think it'd be great to see Shakhtar go through.
What about Tommie C's Mönchengladbach, who, even though they're top of the group, I mean, I don't think we expected them to get through, did we? So.
They'd just be glad to be back in the knockout stages, I'd imagine. One point about Shakhtar before we move on, though. Just as I was looking at the tables of this today, because this group is quite close, you've got to look at head-to-head, and also I had an eye on goal difference as well. Gladbach, who are top of the group, they've got a goal difference of +9. Yep, okay, no surprises there. They're top of the group. Shakhtar in second place have got a goal difference of -7. Second place, -7. How does that happen? And anyway.
Well, hopefully, Mönchengladbach doesn't shrink at the opportunity.
What about you, Colby? Who do you want to see go through?
Well, I mean, I mentioned Shakhtar, but the other one is obviously Ajax. I mean, we wrote them off on the pod last week or the week before, but you know, they've got to beat Atalanta, which is not out of the realm of possibility. So that could happen as well. Obviously, the loss to Liverpool in this match day hurt their chances, but you know, you never know.
Jesse, have I thrown to you for this question?
You have, but I was just going to make one more comment. Inter actually,
sorry, I'm losing track of where we're up to.
Is Inter actually gone? Because what if Shakhtar and Real Madrid just cook it and Inter leap above them? Is that possible? Seems like it is. Yeah, I feel like Inter's.
I think mathematically it might be possible. Yeah,
it's unlikely, but I feel like they will believe until the last game.
I think it goes to head then rather than goal difference, and I think the good thing about head to head is that you can, like, that doesn't change, whereas goal difference obviously fluctuates, and people have got to get out their calculators and so forth. So I'm pretty sure Inter are finished. Boys, before we do wrap up, though, there's one thing I wanted to mention, and that's about Club Brugge. They can qualify if they beat Lazio in Belgium. So, look, Club Brugge have been a bit of a whipping boy in the Champions League for the last couple of years. I've obviously jagged a good result here and there, but I think there would be lots of surprised people if it were that they were to beat Lazio at home, and that would mean they will qualify for the knockout stages. That'd be a great result for them.
I mean, they've got Mignolet in goals, so I mean, cross your fingers and toes, boys.
Well, anything could happen, right?
That's right.
Alrighty, boys. That pretty much wraps things up, I think, for this week. Thanks for joining us, Jesse and Colby. It's been great to catch up with you both. Thanks for tuning in, listeners. It's been great to catch up with you all as well. Obviously, we'll be back next week to talk more Champions League, Premier League, and everything that is happening in the world of football. So until next week, enjoy the football.